Take it away, Jay.
Well, why? I'm in Venice. This is your job.
The wonders of technology. You can kick it off.
I can't. Do you know what? It sounds ridiculous, but without the music, I can't actually remember what we say.
Hello, EggChasers. It's the EggChasers Rugby podcast, the podcast about rugby that doesn't take itself or the game too seriously. I was about to say, just out of muscle memory, back in the rugby dungeon, but we're not. Because, as JB's already said, he is in Venice, presumably to go out and see his beloved Benetton.
Oh, Benetton, unfortunately for them, away at Dragons. Ugh.
Oh, you could have gone to Southwest. You could have gone to Newport. Why didn't you take your family to Newport instead?
I should have, really. I really should have. I tell you what, Venice is stunning. I mean, it's a shock to nobody. But what's so impressive about it is it's so well looked after. It's so clean and tidy. Like, you forget, don't you, that there are serious countries out there. Now, Italy, I wouldn't say, is the most serious country, but at least the local authority can keep the streets clean.
Do you know what I think apart of that? Sorry, before I go any further. Hello, Phil.
Hello, gentlemen. Hello.
I was going to say, because my mum spends a lot of the year living in Greece, and I think there's something, maybe it's not the municipality, maybe it's a bit of personal responsibility. I know everyone in Greece takes great care of their bit of road in front of their taverna or their home or whatever, and they own that bit. So and that collective effort. So maybe there's a bit of that going on in Italy as well.
Well, one of the things here is you're not allowed to leave rubbish on the street. And I don't mean just throwing it away. If you've got a flat or something, you can't leave your bins out for the binman to collect. You've got to go meet the binman. Because it makes sense if you think about it. If the streets flood, where does your rubbish go?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's gone.
I was going to say, I've never been to Venice, so maybe rugby trip to Venice when Benetton have got a home game.
We would have a lot of fun here. A lot of fun. There's a lot of standing around outside bars, drinking Negronis. It looks awesome. It looks awesome. So I think a rugby trip to Venice to watch Benetton play would be outstanding.
I'm definitely game for that.
Yeah, definitely game on for that. We've already got Halloween 2025 in Chicago for Ireland All Blacks penciled in. So yeah, we'll have to start resurrecting these tours. Right, lots to talk about on this episode. Firstly, let me just say thank you for listening and hit subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Get more content at patreon.com/EggChasers. Find JB on LinkedIn. Find Phil lurking on the internet. Find me on EggChasers Rugby YouTube. And here we are, 52 weeks of the year into season number 12. I saw another grassroots podcaster. They've changed their description and they've started referring to themselves as the OG podcasts, which is how we've been referring to ourselves for a while. And theirs is a trade descriptions act because we are the rugby OGs.
Name them.
No, we don't need to.
Name them, and I will text them, and I'll get a voice note out of them for next week to find out exactly what's going on here.
It's fine. Flattery's the.
It's not flattery. It's a lie.
Imitation's best form of flattery. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. Anyway, we've got lots to talk about on this one. A brilliant weekend of Premiership rugby. URC's been pretty fun. And Antoine Dupont's doing more Antoine Dupont things in the top 14. That guy's, and I mean, I know we've already had one revelation. Venice is quite nice. Another one, Antoine Dupont is an absolute freak.
Yes, I agree. But I don't think he's a scum off that we need to start talking about. In fact, I don't think that's the game we need to start talking about. Only one game that we should lead off with today.
King of the North.
Correct. Did anyone see this?
Yeah, and I think one of the moments, I'm not going to talk about we'll talk about the game, but just there was a couple of moments across this weekend that just made little moments make me fall in love with rugby. Lots and lots. There was a few of them. One of them was just the way that rugby does stuff like Ed Slater and the Slater Cup. Yeah. Just the way that rugby does stuff like that. It's always heartfelt, never feels cheesy. It's tragic and sad to watch Ed Slater, but it's lovely the way rugby does it. And the other one, very different, was Steve Diamond coming out of the coaching box at Kingston Park, walking down the steps to the barrier by the side of the pitch so that he could shout at his players from 10 feet away and then have a good old natter with an Exeter Chiefs fan. No other sport.
Yeah. Was that Chiefs fan or was that the Chiefs member of the coaching staff?
No, it was a fan.
Was it?
Yeah, at Newcastle because there's so few people there, and two, other than the big main stand, it's quite a lot of it's just open. You have a lot of people just stood very old school, like one man and his dog style, by the barrier of the pitch.
Well, I tell you what, I think some clubs are much easier to support like that than others. So Sale, when I was going down there on a weekly basis, just to catch up with things, I don't do it so much now. But if you did go down there, if you just did your media day, you get access to absolutely everybody, from the chef to the director of rugby to all the coaching staff to every player. You could literally walk on the field. You could, you could watch the lineouts. There was nothing which is out of bounds. You could go in the gym and watch them lift weights, like nothing. And I think some of the bigger clubs are a little bit more restrictive. So I think Northampton, for example, sitting in a press room with 3 players with a mic, which is fine. I'm not criticising it in any way. Just different ways to do different things. But certainly with the less popular clubs, the opportunity to be a fan and meet people, and if you really want to get into it, I think you could get some great access at Newcastle.
Well, judging by Dimes' comments after the game, if you were out for a few beers in Newcastle on Friday night, you would have got great access to the players. Because Dimes said he was he said he put his hand in his pocket to pay for the night out on Friday in celebration,
and
he would do the same. He'd do the same every time that they win a game this season. So that's some carrot.
Yeah, that is. I mean, spending Dimes' dime is very appealing. It might also mean he is not that confident of winning many games.
Yes, that's how I read it as well. It's not going to be that expensive if you only win one game.
So let's put this into perspective. 581 days without a win.
25 straight losses in the Premiership.
And they've gone and done it. And I tell you what, this is what I love about this victory, is that they've done it with an objectively worse team and less money than they had last year. So they've not been recruiting hard. In fact, if anything, they've lost even more players, and they still did it. And I was thinking today about the impact some of these signings have made. I mean, I don't know if you watched the game, but the signings of, I say signings, he was actually languishing in the squad, but the promotion of Sam Stewart, the scrum half, who, by the way, I found out. He's been
starting for them for a few years.
No, he's not. He started under Dimes first. I know this because I spoke to Dimes today. It started under Dimes first after languishing in the squad. But I also found something else out earlier on this week. Do you know he was at Harlequins?
Yeah, we mentioned that last week, didn't we?
Do you want to know the sliding door moment?
He was at Harlequins, was it about 10 years ago he was at Harlequins?
He was at Harlequins in 2015.
Under Dean Richards, yeah?
Oh, did he? Was it something to do with Bloodgate?
Nope. He went on holiday to Thailand and texted Dean Richards that he was going to be back late or not at all, and Dean Richards tore up his contract, and that was the end of his Harlequins career.
And then signed him at Newcastle?
No, he's been to Richmond, and then maybe did sign under Dino.
Dean Richards might have fired him, but he also signed him.
Did he sign him again, or was
and played him a lot, mate? He was playing for Newcastle in 2017.
Well,
so Dimes is, unless this is a different player, Dimes is wrong.
Well, no, I actually am with Dimes here because I do not remember him play. I watched a lot.
I was working on BT Sport on the Premiership for quite a long time, which is why I was fairly sure. I was like, no, I've seen a lot of this guy. But anyway.
Hang on a minute. We mentioned him last week, and that was your time to say this, but you didn't, which makes me suspicious.
You didn't make the statement then that that Dimes gave him his break and he's only just started playing for Newcastle.
I said he was languishing in the squad and playing for Bladen, which is absolutely true.
Okay.
That is absolutely true. He certainly wasn't starting because, we had Louis Schroeder before he went to Bath. After that, we had, who was the kid? You had Mickey Youngs before. I mean, he's not been starting much. And he's 30.
He was in all but
Look,
three. He was in all but three Premiership matchday squads.
at what age? Like
the season before last.
31.
Sorry?
What, like age 31? So yeah, Dimes is right. He was languishing in the squad prior to this. Otherwise, we would know something about him. And more to the point, he played bloody well, really well.
I'll agree with you on that. 100%, I agree.
Then there's Grayson. Like I have not thought Grayson's been a tremendous player, but the composure for that drop goal was absolutely superb. Do you know where he came from?
He was at Bedford, wasn't he?
Apparently, he was coaching a team against Newcastle University, and Dimes asked him to go for a trial. And he took it. And the last one was Sammy Arnold, which apparently he was just out of. He wasn't qualified for GIF, and they snapped him up. And I just think those three signings, those three players yesterday were absolutely monumental. But I think probably the best of all of them is not a diamond signing. I thought Blamire was exceptional.
Yeah, Blamire. So Dimes referenced last week or the week before that he's had approaches from other Premiership clubs about 4 Newcastle players, and you can probably guess who those players are. Because
Blamire, Callum Chick.
Yes. My assumption is those two plus Radwan and
probably Redshaw.
Those would be the 4 that instantly come to mind. Redshaw only really by reputation because from what I saw he wasn't outstanding in this game, and I've not really seen much of him play. But Blamire, superb. Chick carried very hard and works phenomenally hard and has done for many years. And Radwan, when he gets opportunities that he hasn't really done this season, but when he is one of the most electric wingers in the Premiership.
Yeah,
this definitely came up in conversation, JB. But just again, I mean, I don't want to. This sounds a bit of stolen valor going on here. I'm delighted you spoke to Dimes, and I bet he was in a really good mood. But making it sound like he's discovered these players. Sammy Arnold's an Ireland international.
Sammy Arnold, he's not. Well, hang on. Whichever
way for Munster, Ulster, and
Connacht. Whoa! You wait there. Whichever way that you look at it, right? He has had to get a player and persuade them to play for Newcastle. I mean, it doesn't matter what he's done. The fact that he got him to play for Newcastle is unbelievable. Like, do you know? The opportunity to play Premiership rugby for me would be like the ultimate achievement. If I was good enough, I still wouldn't play for Newcastle. Right? I think that signing is absolutely remarkable, particularly given how good he's been.
Well, it's remarkable when you see what other offers he had. If we knew that, then we'd have the counterfactual. But yes, it's great, and he's turned. It's a good signing. It's a good player.
Of course, it is. And does it not remind you of so many of the signings that he made at Sale, when they had basically no budget, and he's looking around and he's finding value. Nobody does it better. Nobody.
I think this is a good win for Dimes. I'll go as far as saying that. I wouldn't say that no one does it better than Dimes.
Nobody is better at finding value from players and assembling squads in this manner. I mean, look, I've watched it at Sale for God knows how many years before Simon Orange took over. I can guarantee that statement is true. I would just like to sort of give the counterpoint to this, though, which is that they only just beat Exeter, right? And obviously, breaking a losing streak is very difficult, but they only just beat Exeter, and it is worth pointing out how poor Exeter were. Some of the things that they did wrong in this game. I mean, there's not so many things. Sorry, not one or two things. There are so many things. And the number one thing, which I just couldn't get over, was the discipline. I had something like 13 to 14 penalties against Exeter by about 60 minutes in, and they still only just beat them.
From what I saw, the discipline was really bad from Exeter.
It?
But I saw the highlights, and I seen a bit of the wrap up from the Rugby Review because I was watching the Northampton game.
Yeah, I think that Go on, Tim.
I was
Sorry.
going to say, you mentioned Sam Stewart and Ethan Grayson, who had good games and controlled the game management. We've been talking about it for a while. Exeter 9 and 10, particularly scrum half, is just not good enough. Nowhere near good enough.
Yeah,
and when you
agree
add
with
to that the fact you don't have the left foot and the game management of Henry Slade, and they and they've got less leaders available, and it happened last week as well. They took Jack Yendel and Jack Vermeulen. They didn't have Jack Vermeulen in this game, who's one of the sort of more experienced leaders in the team. They took them both off at the same time, and it just nosedived, and they lost to Bristol.
Yeah, I think this team is learning a lot of lessons that they should really have learned last year. Kind of like they overperformed last year. There's nothing wrong with their physical squad. There's nothing wrong with the talent level, which I have. I think those two things are broadly true. I just think that they're not experienced enough to go and win games when it really matters. And the penalty count is, it shows exactly that. Yeah, and that is not something Henry Slade can fix. Jack Maunder was not great, but it's also something Jack Maunder can't fix. I mean, that is
his brother's in. He's in the Pro D2 now.
Oh, is he? Sam Maunder then? Yeah, Maunder, one of the Maunders. So I think when they review that on Monday, thankfully they play for Rob Baxter, and it will get reviewed and it will get dealt with. But it doesn't seem, last few weeks, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. In fact, if anything, it's got worse and worse and worse. And there's two other things I think about Exeter as well. They've picked this pack in a very deliberate way, I feel. I feel that they've prioritised size over everything else, which is fine because there is definitely a correlation between size, big packs, and good packs. And I think they've done that. But it's not showing up in the set piece because they were getting roundly smashed by Newcastle. And I think this, again, is a learning curve because, mind you, is it learning curve? Because I think they had Scott Sio and Marcus Street. Marcus Street, I've spoke about before, is just not up to it. But across the board, their scrimmaging is just not adequate. And the last thing is their style of play. Nobody likes to arm wrestle more. And I think I referenced it in the Sale game. When I watched Newcastle against Sale, just man for man, as in, how do they look at open play? Broadly speaking, comparable. Broadly speaking. But when Sale started to mix it up with tactical kicking, I think that's going to be a theme of this year's Premiership, actually. Who can kick tactically the best? Newcastle fell to pieces. Well, Exeter just didn't have that option. We spoke about Sam Maunder there. Some of his kicking was absolutely woeful. Because Exeter liked to hold it in tight, they played right into the one thing that Newcastle could do. And then you add all those penalties onto it as well, and the lack of a scrum. You think, well, they probably deserve to lose this. And I don't think they'll make the same mistake twice. But yeah, it's a very, very good win for Newcastle. If they treat this well, I think in some ways there could be some huge upsides for Exeter as just a massive wake-up call as to what they need to do.
And is this does anyone regard this as some new dawn for Newcastle that's going to change the fate of their season?
Well, it already has, hasn't it? They've won a game.
I don't think it will change the fate of their season. I think Newcastle will still finish bottom, probably by some distance in the end. But it's nice they got a win.
They might win another game. Ultimately, they're just not. They're not good enough at the overall game of rugby, and I don't mean that in the sense of attack versus defence. They need to be a more well-rounded team. Physically, they're adequate. Scrimmaging, they're pretty good. The line-out needs work. I think where they're going to come unstuck is when teams start to stretch them with tactical kicking and smarter systems than what Exeter employed. And if Sale can beat them that way, and Sale are not that sort of team, they're going to really struggle. I think the teams they've got a good chance against would be someone like Leicester, but then Leicester will just pound them. Leicester will beat them so badly at their own game that's not on. So, I don't know if it is a new dawn, but winning in of itself is valuable. And if they can, get one or two together, at least they believe they can do it now.
Is this season... Is it going to be the playoff?
No. I was gonna just. I thought that'd be useful to touch upon. So Doncaster are the only team that have met the Premiership's eligibility criteria, much to the frustration of many other clubs who said that it is, it's not realistic that the amount of how stringent the RFU rules are. They said it's actually, well, some people running championship clubs, I forget which one, said it is literally impossible if you don't already have the infrastructure in place, because you have to put you cannot just say we'll commit to having 10,000 seats within 3 years. You have to cost it all out, say where you're getting the materials from, who your supplier, that sort of level of depth. And they've just said, well, we haven't got planning permission for that yet. So because you have to, you'll understand this, Phil. The boxes that need to be ticked and the processes that go through, you can't just do all that on a bit of paper just like that.
No, and it might be so. I think the window to get those plans in place it might be very early in the new year. It might be Christmas time, which it would be phenomenally difficult to get all that in place for this season. So yeah, you're right. You reminded me that only Doncaster would be eligible, but they are performing pretty poorly in the league. But it doesn't prevent them. It doesn't prevent, say, Ealing, who would have the best shot and have the most ambition, by this time next year.
Yeah.
All of those plans could well be in place if they so choose to do so.
Correct.
But yeah,
it's just
you're right.
We're not going to get that this year. So
yeah, there will be no playoff this year. That's
no,
unless
there's something very surprising happens in the championship.
Yes,
at this stage.
Correct.
Just zooming out a little bit as well. We've already mentioned Henry Slade. He wasn't playing for Exeter, but he is in the England squad. Is there any? Well, I can answer that. I don't even need to ask the question. There definitely wasn't anything surprising about Steve Borthwick's squad. Anyone you feel you would have liked to have seen in that wasn't?
No, not overly, actually. I think it's a quite sensible squad.
Yeah, it's most of the players who are in there. I have very, very few complaints, almost none. I am delighted that Lazowski's in there. Because he showed again, he's had a great season after a bad year of injury last year. He showed again this weekend what a good player all round he is, and how important his kicking is, which was ultimately the difference between Bristol and Saracens. Had AJ McGinty kicked 100%, which Lazowski did, Bristol would have won.
Yeah.
A lot of people have said Ted Hill, and he has been playing really well, and he does look good, and he looks like an archetypal number 6 who's improving his line out work as well, and has even played at second row for Bath lately. Mm-hmm. I can understand that, but I also look at the England squad and go, yeah, who would I drop? I don't know if I would drop anyone. Maybe you could argue they could lose a 7 like Ben Curry, but then I don't think Ted Hill would be starting any of the autumn internationals anyway. So I would like to have seen him in there, and I'd probably swap him for Ben Curry, but I also am not too bothered about the squad. Other than that, I don't think there's anyone that I can think of that I would
Charlie
in especially.
Charlie Ewells would be the only one that you could drop for Ted Hill.
Yeah, the fact that they've got 5 locks says to me that Ollie Chesham is a 6 first and foremost, which is where he played against Ireland when they won, and then he played at 6 against France the following week in the Six Nations, and he looked really good. So I think Ollie Chesham is basically, he's not a lock in Steve Borthwick's squad. He's a blindside flanker.
Just on Ted Hill, just to round that off, I wouldn't have Ted Hill in the squad as it is, but I think he's an opportunity player. And what I mean by that is, I think once he gets in the England squad, he's never leaving it. Providing he stays fit, if he gets a start or if he comes off the bench, I think that is Ted Hill in the squad indefinitely. But at the moment, he doesn't deserve to be there.
He's an Alex Mitchell, because Steve Borthwick did not pick Alex Mitchell. And then Jack Van Borthwick got injured and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Although
quality operator.
Although now Mitchell is injured, it gives the opportunity for one of those other boys like Spencer or Van Portfleet or Randall to claim that shirt and make it their own.
That's probably the position that's going to be most. That's going to tell me most about how Steve Borthwick, if and how his team is going to move on, or how they're going to play, is which 9 he picks, because they're very different.
Yeah,
they are different. And the Steve Borthwick style of play is very international, very pressure-based, very kicking-based. That said, Mitchell was kicking very well for England and does kick a lot for England. So,
but he had a tempo, which is a little bit where I'm hoping they go. I'd quite like England to go Randall, but
I think the other two, I think Van Portfleet and Spencer, they're not quite as live wire as Randall, but they can play. They can play that disciplined, pragmatic kicking game, and they can speed things up. You've got. It's kind of always the debate with England when you're trying to choose between Van Portfleet or Spencer, say, as someone who might be a bit more of a straight man than Randall. They're both superb players. They're both absolutely superb. And actually, the bigger thing is picking one, having them fit for a long period of time, and sticking with them, letting them gel with whoever the 10 is, probably Marcus Smith.
Yeah. One of the features, jumping back to the rugby, one of the features of this weekend's games, when you look across the board, is how well players in that England squad are playing. You can go through the whole squad, and Ollie Lawrence was brilliant, and Charlie Yule's had a great game. Nick Ezekwe, another guy that's added, he was really good for Saracens. Elliot Daly was awesome. Lazowski was great. Marcus Smith, Alex Dombrandt were brilliant. Randall was great for Bristol. Yeah, you look everywhere, and England players were playing really well.
Yeah, totally agree. I thought one of the most impressive performances this week was Elliot Daly. I thought Elliot Daly was absolutely sublime. He had limited touches, and every time he touched the ball, something happened. Him, Lazowski, just so cohesive and so used to each other.
Yeah, that game was dynamite.
It'll be interesting. It was mentioned in comms, but it'll be interesting to see if Elliot Daly does force his way into the 23, because I think he was in the Six Nations. I want to say Six Nations and Summer Tour, but very recently he has been the 23rd man because of his utility. But can he force himself back into or maintain being in the 23, and can he get a starting position? Because that's the most.
He didn't go to New Zealand because he was his wife was having a baby.
Yeah.
So he stayed at home for that. But in the Six Nations, he was that 23rd man. I suppose the one awkward thing for Elliot Daly is that Tommy Freeman's very versatile. So maybe his versatility isn't as necessary. So he needs to get in there on absolute merit. And the way he's playing, I think he probably deserves that. Tommy
Freeman's excellent as well. Tommy Freeman's
he was great. He was great this weekend.
But they were all great. Like, it's really hard to pick. Like, I mean, I tell you, the one who could be picked, he won't be picked, and I definitely understand why, would be Ibitoya.
I don't know if Ibitoya is, if you just celebrate someone for what they can do, then 100%. His upside is brilliant, and but I think he's going to have that Christian Wade thing where people. And maybe at international level, it does get exposed, the things that you can't do. And we saw it in this game, the absolute sublime, incredible attacking skills of him and the maybe limitations in defence, perhaps.
Limitations in defence, limitations being in the right place at the right time without the ball, I might add. I mean, it's his positioning, isn't it? I guess there's an element of, is he the back three version of Finn Russell from 2 years ago, combined with a little bit of PS Speaks? He's so talented. Why would he ever bother training? Like, it's both those things. Because in terms of attacking play, he's unplayable. I mean, do you know the other thing which I thought? In fact, there's two other thoughts that I've had. One is about the Newcastle game again, but it's a broader rugby point, and the other one is about Ibitoya, and they both kind of link in together about development of players. And what was the RFU and the England system doing as a whole system, like a whole bit of machinery, letting Ibitoya spend so long in places like, I don't know, Tel Aviv Heat and
Argent.
Why? How did this happen? And then he comes back, and I'm not sure how much he's getting paid at Bristol. I assume it's not big money. and he's tearing it up. I'm thinking, like, what could this guy's career have been to England if somehow they'd have kept him in the Premiership somehow? If
Well,
someone...
there's a bit of I suppose the fact was there, teams were going bust as his Harlequins contract came to an end.
Yeah.
3 teams went bust. COVID was happening, salary cap was reduced, and all of those things combined meant that he didn't get a contract that was good enough to tempt him. I'm sure he had offers, but they were probably just not very good ones.
I wonder if he did. I mean, Tel Aviv Heat. I mean, how big were these offers? Mind you, that's sad.
I'm certain he would have had an offer or two, but it would have been like when Bristol offloaded Dan Thomas to try and get Jack Willis, and they could probably only offer him about 50k or 60k. Now, Jack Willis then, obviously, because he's amazing, had the Toulouse offer on the table, whereas Ibitoye didn't quite.
No, he was, yeah.
But
yeah,
you've talked about this a lot, Jay, about how sometimes it's the strength and the weakness. England having so many players, they can be picky about what they do and don't like. And other nations would bite their hand off to have Ibitoye, and he'd be an international already. But Ibitoye just goes on the list with Christian Wade, as I mentioned, Adam Radwan, so incredible at what they do, but because you have lots of other options, you can nitpick about the things they're not as good as. He'd be an international if he was Argentinian.
Or Welsh.
Yeah, well, Wales would love to have an Ibitoye.
If he's Argentinian, he'd probably have 2 European Cups now playing for Toulouse.
Well, they've got actually, and I'll say that they've got got even more wingers than England. Argentina, 2 of them in the Premiership this weekend. One in this that match, Elizalde and Isgro. Did you notice Isgro for Harlequins? 2 tries with 2.
Well, I certainly noticed.
He had 2 chains on.
Oh yes, I did notice that. Actually,
with necklaces on.
Cool.
I didn't notice
cool.
I noticed the tries and I noticed the explosive power. I didn't notice the chains.
Yeah, referee must have missed that in his pre-game checks.
I will just on Ibitoye. Just 2 other things to mention. One, another comparison would be back in the day, 15 years ago. James SimpsonDaniel, who had
great shout,
mega talent, could do everything and more with ball in hand, but there was a few question marks over his all-round defensive game, shall we say? Hence why he had very few England appearances. And Ibitoye, ultimately, his penalty at the end, you could put it on McGinty missing more kicks than Lazowski, or you could pin it on a moment of madness from Ibitoye to give the final penalty away. It's the downside.
Oh God, he did, didn't he? That was ridiculous as well. That was ridiculous.
It was a brain dead move. That
we'll come back to that game in a second. Just a Newcastle Exeter point, linking to Ibitoye and the England system, so on and so forth. Exeter fielded a team with God knows how many people from University of Exeter. I know Dimes has been shopping around University of Newcastle, and is it Northumberland up there as well?
Durham and Northumbria universities as well.
Yeah. Now, I just had a thought. I'd love you to pitch in on this. Like, university systems have been kind of important of late. Certainly when I was in university, like, there was no real link between Bristol, say, and UWE back in the day, or University of Bristol. In fact, you'd find players from your clubs, and in fact, I remember certainly when Sale needed players, they'd be shopping around everywhere. Like, I think they got Tom Homer, I think his name was, from Sedgley or somewhere, or Leeds. And now it seems to be that the natural place for them to go shopping is not the Championship or not local clubs. Like, say, Andy Fenby came from Blaydon and then ended up playing for Newcastle back in the day. It seems to be the universities. And this seems to be something which has sort of crept up on us on the last, 5 years. And now it seems to be the place where everyone gets their own players. And what is this telling you about the formation and makeup of club teams up and down the country?
Is it not, certainly with Exeter, is it not that they bring in those boys to Exeter and they have links to the university? So they're brought in on like an academy contract and also do their studies at the same time, rather than there just happens to be a load of amazing boys who just happen to have gone to Exeter University.
Yeah, so when I was at Exeter, there was a link with the Chiefs, and Andy Beattie was there on a scholarship playing at Chiefs when they were in the Championship at the time. And
you've got quite a lot of experience with Bath and the university system there.
Sorry, say again?
What about Bath? You've got quite a lot of experience with Bath and the university system there.
Yeah, so I was going to say that was just before. That was when Exeter was still at the county ground, and obviously it's pushed on since there. And when I went to Bath, there was a link with Bath Rugby Club, and there was a course even. And I think there's a lot of this that goes on at these universities. There was a course called Coach Education, and it was basically a BTEC, and it was offered to a load of kids who were leaving school age, and it got them a couple of years where they could come to Bath, be sort of connected to the academy, and go to the university and get good rugby there. And then, of course, they start sharing coaches. The Bath rugby team used to come and train at the gym at the university on the lifting platforms and stuff like that. So I would regularly just stand and watch Danny Grucott lifting weights. It was immense.
Awesome.
Loved
Absolutely
it.
awesome.
But that was a long time ago now. So there were links, particularly, and that was it. Though both the universities I was at were in the Premier League, which is now called Superbucks, and it's only got better, both in terms of the links with clubs, and I think the standard overall is absolutely outstanding. And I'm involved at Manchester Metropolitan University coaching teams there, and the standard that's like the third league down. They're ambitious and trying to get up there, and the standard's really, really good. I think you if I had to sort of equate it, I'd say the third tier of university rugby is probably maybe National 2.
I think you're probably right.
Potentially, it might even be higher than that. Might be National 1. You'd have a lot of overlap with those players. So I think Superbucks now is probably National 1. Most players who play Superbucks would be National 1 or Championship standard, and that's at the age of 18 to 21.
Wow.
So I saw back in the day Loughborough playing Coldy, and Coldy were not the Coldy that they are now. That was Coldy, again, over 10 years ago now. And Loughborough have been the premier university team. Am I speaking out of turn there? Would we agree that Loughborough have been one of the better teams for a long, long time?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would stack up with what you say, that it has got better. I think the big difference is that it feels like the universities have turned into the hunting ground of choice now for the Premiership clubs, rather than something which they would send their lads to for an education. It's almost like the other way around now. You don't hear much about players being called up from Sedgley Park or Preston or Coldy or any of these clubs. Very, very rarely now. Bedford. You'd always get a lad from Bedford somewhere, whether it be Northampton or Leicester. But it just seems to be that universities are taking over that. And it makes sense, doesn't it? What's their demographic? Young men between 18 to 21. But what also is that doing to the local clubs, or the clubs that would have previously fielded these guys? Because I'm guessing if you went to Newcastle and you were a great rugby player back in the day, in fact, I know this because, look at the Andy Fenby story, he would be going to, say, Newcastle Uni, but then playing his high-level rugby with Bladen. I think now what they do is they keep them inside of university.
I suspect there's still a bit of that Bladen-Tyndale links as part of the route. But the university, particularly, as one example, I was at a much worse university, but at Lancaster University, where I played my uni rugby. As an example, the gym back in the day when I was there 20 years ago was dreadful, absolutely dreadful, like a horrendous 1970s council gym. Whereas now they've spent millions of pounds, got a brand new facility right over the top of the rugby pitches, which is a fantastic facility. So all of that S&C, the opportunity to train, is miles better than it was 15, 20 years ago.
And I'd be up for, well, we've already talked about, I would scrap the academies connected to Premiership clubs. I'd be up for it going back to the local clubs and the universities being a really key part of it. Even some sort of connect Super Bucks with the Premiership in a draft system, get people interested in actually watching the university matches, and let them have maybe a draft system for university. Obviously, you can voluntarily go into that, but I think that'd be really cool.
So I'm mixed on this because why am I mixed? Well, because university rugby is great, and I love my university rugby, so I'm happy to let it evolve in whichever way it does. But university teams in of themselves are not really institutions. So, you go to your university team, you play for 2 or 3 years, and you leave your university team, and then you sort of just dissipate into whatever it is. So I'd be very cautious that if they're sucking up all the best talent, which I think they are, because these guys are playing for university on the Saturday teams as well as Wednesday teams now, that when they dissipate back to wherever they came from, they just go into the workplace, not stay at their clubs. Because you don't really get universities being watched by the 60-year-old old boy, or the second teamer who's like 50 years old. That's very much a club thing. I just worry they're taking that prime talent away from clubs, and that they might not return. But I don't know.
That links on to something that we should touch upon then, sort of at grassroots level. And on this podcast, we talk about the superstars, but we like to get we're all involved at or have been involved and do occasionally play, and JB and I coach.
Can play.
And JB plays. Big game next week against Broughton Park v Didsbury. Is that at Didsbury or at BP?
I don't know which one it is, but I can tell you this much: in 126 years, or whatever Broughton Park have been in existence for, the Broughton Park first team has never beaten the Didsbury first team. So, that's a hell of a losing streak for those boys to put right this year.
First game last year, right? Yeah, first game last year.
Yeah, and still they've got a 100% non-win rate against us. So, anyway.
But we became aware, and on one of our WhatsApp groups, it was flagged up. Someone who's a referee in the West Midlands pointed out that there was a level 5 team this week who did not field a team, and it was a home walkover for Dudley Kingswinsford against Kenilworth, who could not raise a team, which made me think, well, that means if a first 15 at level 5 cannot raise a team, that's a warning sign, because that means there's no second team, there's no third team, fourth team, there's no Colts team. You have not got enough players, and that's a real warning sign for rugby. As it happens, you know the DOR quite well, JB. So as well as Steve Diamond, you've been talking to another DOR. So what can you tell us?
Yeah, so there is a little bit of background to this, which is Kings Winford have just come down, and I'm not really familiar with the rugby culture in the Midlands, but I think it is I think money is quite prevalent, let's put it that way. And Kenilworth are not a team that pay any money, from what I understand, or if they do, it's very, 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 very limited. But you're right to point out, I do know the DOR there, and I'm happy to say he's basically one of the best rugby minds that I've ever met, including in the professional game. So I know this guy because we were together at Talk H, and there's lots of people who are responsible for turning Talk H into, some, basically a social club which occasionally played rugby, into a serious rugby team. Lots of people. But one of the primary movers who was responsible for increasing the overall base of knowledge of the actual sport, how we trained, the whole thing, is now the DOR at Kenilworth. And, we worked together for, 4 years. And I can tell you right now, he is exceptional at coaching and doing all the nuts and bolts of rugby. However, this was not a great weekend for Kenilworth. So they didn't have the requisite front row. Lots of injuries, lots of unavailabilities. Now, even though I've said all of those lovely things, I would also say that when we worked together well, because we had the exact opposite opinions to many, many things. I would have played these lads. I would have played them no matter what. But I think the idea was that it's an injury risk, that because money is so prevalent, if you start forcing players to play in games where you just not got a chance, they're going to go elsewhere. And we're talking big money around there. Kenilworth are in a league where not only are their peers at the same level paying, but also the tier below are paying. So there are some politics and there are some things that you need to navigate.
Yeah,
which
I just want to clarify. So actually, the explicit reason for not playing a game and conceding a home walkover wasn't that they couldn't put a team on the field, is that they chose not to because they would get it handed to them.
Front row issues, basically. Now, I don't
No. So hold on. No. I want to be clear about this because it's been a bit ambiguous. They didn't have any props, or the props they had, they didn't want to put on the field.
It's an interesting question, Tim. So I do not know these props, so I could not say. But if the DOR thinks it's not safe to field those props, you've got to. I mean, look, I would field them. I would send out anyone to their death, frankly. Like, if you want the opportunity and there's a game on, I will send you to your death should you ask me to do so. I have no problem with it. You want the opportunity, you worked hard for it, we have it, fine. Lots and lots of DORs would not do that. And, it's not what I would do, but I see the argument. Now, I would 100% play this game. But, it was basically a front row and a safety issue. But it's a dangerous game.
Yeah, I would just flag up, okay, fine, I guess it's his job and it's his club, and I don't know the nuances and the ins and outs, but I will just say Manchester Rugby Club's one of my former clubs. And yes, I wasn't one of the players that stuck around when all the money went. But I would like to, again, as we have done many times down the years, just applaud the bravery, belligerence, commitment of those lads that went out every Saturday. Many of them were Colts.
Yeah.
And they got pumped 100-0 in National 1.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's perversely one of the great rugby stories, isn't it? That they actually sent boys down every single week to do something, and they did it. I mean, it does warm your heart. It's such a... there's something so noble about the whole endeavour. And they found their level, and they're making it back up now. And it's taken...
Yeah, and that was the next story, because they lost for they lost for longer than Newcastle Falcons lost for. And then when they did win a game, that was just an amazing moment as well.
But it took 5 years of being pumped, and not just like there must have been some safety issues in some of those games, because they were sending out kids for 5 years and getting beat 80-0, 90-0, 100-0 for 5 years, and everyone who stuck around for that period, including the people at the club, the coaches, the kit man, the people organising the bus, fair play to them for going through it for so long.
Yeah, I actually think that. I think there's a book in that. I really do. Because they were plummeting. There's one guy, I don't know if you're with us, Phil, but I recognised him out in town. I was like, are you the Manchester Fly half that got relegated like 5 years running?
Oh, their captain, Danny.
Yeah.
I played with him.
Wow.
I played with him, and he was a twos player. He was a seconds player. He was a Manchester Colt in first year of senior rugby in the twos, came training every Tuesday, Thursday night. And then he ended up being their captain fly half for the next 5 years. And he was still captain when they finally won a game. Do you know what? That's the story. We can cover that.
I think, that to me, that guy should be in the Rugby Hall of Fame. I forget George Gregan. He had everything handed to him on a plate. Give me that guy.
Speaking of stories, there have been some more rugby this week. In the three big European leagues, can you tell me the unbeaten teams this season?
Toulouse?
No, they got beat by Bordeaux.
No, they got beaten. You're right. In the big leagues. Oh, so Leinster and Lions in the URC.
Oh, well done, Tim.
You've none in the Premiership.
Nope. In the big league, hang on, the three big leagues. Okay, so not
Richmond and Rams in National 1. I know that.
Well, I just meant the three big leagues.
Yeah, so it's just Lions and Leinster then.
You've got it. Yeah. Those are the only two unbeaten teams. So they'll try and bring us back to rugby this weekend.
Yeah.
And we've already spoken about the winless.
Manchester from a decade ago.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll very quickly, just on that, because I watched quite a bit of URC rugby this weekend, I'll just very briefly say there was some awesome matches. The Glasgow Sharks game was great. Really, really enjoyed that. The refereeing in the URC is absolutely abominable. It's dreadful. And really? I don't like getting on referees' cases, but it makes, every time I watch URC and Premiership, I feel so grateful for the English referees.
Well, let me make one point on refereeing from the Premiership game. Did you see the Lazowski tackle on Ogre?
I was going to say, what's that guy's name? Because he's relatively new in the Premiership, isn't he? Woodthorpe or something like that?
Yeah,
he is.
That's the boy.
I couldn't tell you his name, but I thought that was a superb.
I loved it. Loved that decision. You're so right. I was watching the replays thinking Lazowski was clearly trying to wrap his arm, but Ogre's shoulder was about 2 inches off the ground, and he just knocked his arm out of the way. Many times we've seen that given as yellow or worse.
Or worse.
Because there wasn't even a pen.
There was multiple potential foul plays, because there was certainly head, shoulder, neck area on head, shoulder, neck area. There was definitely, unquestionably, those two areas came together at force, but it was a consequence of both players going so low. And I didn't even think initially about the non-wrap, but to me, the head, shoulder, neck contact was rugby incident. Then they brought up the non-wrap, and I thought they were going to do what we kind of worried was being done in the the Northampton tackle against Bath, the number 8 who got injured. Anyway, against Leicester.
Yeah.
With the Raffel incident. Because something, it looked horrific that they would find a way to create a penalty, and they didn't. It was exactly the right call. I thought it was superb refereeing.
And the other thing about that is him saying he was trying to wrap, but he couldn't get his arm there, because if he'd gone with the original suggestion from the TMO that there was no wrap, you're not allowed to apply mitigation by the framework that they have, at which point it would have been head-to-head contact, minimum yellow card.
Yeah, because it's always illegal if there is no wrap.
Wasn't it the same guy who did actually give the Raffel yellow card? Because that's the only bit of ref recently I've felt the need to criticise, and I'm sure it was him.
Possibly. Well,
possibly. But I'm with you. I like how he dealt with this, and maybe it was feedback from the Raffel incident, because that was not even a penalty.
Look, refereeing in rugby, as we've talked about many times, is so incredibly hard, because there's as much as referees are trying to spot infringements, they're also, in it kind of uniquely in sport, they're an official who's actually letting loads of genuine offences go all the time to let the game flow.
Yeah, there was a saying about referees a long time ago. It's like they're kind of like the HMRC, which is, yes, it's important that they catch the bad things, but equally as important is what do they let you get away with. There is an element of that, and a good referee. I mean, I don't think Nigel Owens would ever be classed as a great technical referee by other referees. I think he was actually quite controversial because he let a lot of stuff go. So he was almost like an artisan. All the games that he reffed were more enjoyable. He reffed some of the greatest games of all time. And it is unusual in rugby union that the ref has got such a big impact on the enjoyment of the game. Because you can ref in multiple ways. I don't think, for example, Matt Carley's games are particularly enjoyable compared to Wayne Barnes' games. I don't think Matt Carley is a bad ref at all. In fact, I think he's a magnificent ref. He just does it differently.
That's fair. The ref. That's another metric. By using what you just said, the referees in the Premiership are the best, because my goodness me, some of the games lately have been brilliant. And this weekend, that Bristol Saracens game we've already mentioned, that was dynamite. Fitz Harding. We've already mentioned Ogre and Ibitoy. You've mentioned Lazowski,
Well,
and
Adrian McGinty is playing different level of rugby to
he's
what
so
I've seen him
good.
play for a long time.
Yeah,
And do you know
he's
he's
so good.
36?
Say again?
He's 36. I thought he's much younger than that.
He's never.
He's
That's
34.
what he's on comms. They said 36 on comms. I'm like, no way.
If
Because they're saying,
his
how old
Wikipedia
will
page,
move on next year?
if his Wikipedia page is correct, he was born in 1990, so he's 34.
34, correct.
Just on the referees,
Yep.
JB, you were correct. It was Anthony Woodthorpe who refereed both the Raffel incident in Tigers Northampton last week and the Ogre Lazowski incident in Bristol Saracens this week.
Yeah.
Well, it's good one for letting the boys play in this one. But those games, Saturday's 2 games were absolutely awesome. Friday was fun. Newcastle, I've mentioned it, but Quinn's Bath was brilliant as well.
Yeah. Well, let's just start with Newcastle Bristol. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this last 20 minutes. I mean, it was some of the most enjoyable rugby I have seen in a long, long time. A long, long time.
Wait, are you taking us back to Newcastle?
You're going back to Newcastle?
We've already done 20 minutes on Newcastle.
Minutes on that game.
No, Saracens Bristol.
You said Newcastle.
You just said Newcastle.
Sorry,
good.
sorry.
Good, that's
Did I go
fine.
Newcastle?
No, crack on.
I'm sure I said Bristol. Did it just come over? I'm sure I said Bristol.
You did just say Newcastle
You
then.
said Newcastle, but that's fine. That's fine. That's good.
I'm sorry. No, Bristol. I love this game. I absolutely love it.
I'm Tim Kaine, and I've worked hard to pass legislation that makes life better for Virginians. Like passing laws lowering prescription drug costs, capping the cost of insulin at $35, bringing good-paying jobs into our communities, and helping Black-owned businesses grow. In good times and in tough times, Virginians stand up and stand together. Will you join me? Together, we can keep delivering for Virginia. I'm Tim Kaine, candidate for U.S. Senate, and I approve this message. Paid for by Kaine for Virginia.
There's something, isn't there, just so satisfying about watching the camera pan back to Lamb after every single Saracen score.
Well, there was the, I want to say, the second Daly try where they were talking to Pat Lam as there was a mistake from the kickoff. They dropped it. He's like, "Oh no! See, that's not us trying to run the ball. It's not mistakes from running the ball. That's just some idiot has dropped the ball." And then 10 seconds later, Elliot Daly crashes through and goes over the line, and he was not a happy boy.
No.
Well,
They were 35. They were 35-17 up.
Well, they don't struggle to score, do they? That is for sure. I wonder if there's a little bit of Bristol, which is similar to Exeter, which is they are scoring a lot of points purely through the endeavours of exceptionally talented finishers. So in Exeter's case, I've spoken about it before, it is...
Faye Waboso.
Thank you. And for Bristol, it's Ibitoye. Take out his... What did he get? 3 tries? Just a quick 3 tries?
Oh, Harding got 3 tries.
Yeah, Ibitoye didn't score.
Did he not?
No, he said it, and I do think Bristol is more.
God, I thought he did.
I do think Bristol's more system than that. You've already mentioned McGinty; he's massively influential, but they all run fantastic shapes and patterns and take gambles on the offloads. When anyone makes a half break, there's 2 guys either side on their shoulder. They play quick. It's a system and it's a mindset, and it's so fun to watch.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. It's the cohesion, isn't it, of how they attack. But equally, watching Saracens slowly adjust and slowly break it down and sort of getting that foothold into the game and not having that shape intimidate them for the last, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, that was great to see. I mean, that really was very cool. And then they have a handful of chances and they make it work. And I love that. I mean, that's championship level play.
But it was also the final 5 minutes, even going into the final 2 minutes where it's a 1-point game, and I think at one point there was 3 intercepts, kind of back to back to back, that were both teams were going for it. Both teams really, really wanted the win, but were willing to expand and kind of risk everything in order to secure the win. It was dynamite to watch.
I'd actually draw the parallel with what you said. Oh, sorry, go on, Jay.
Oh, no, after you said.
Well, I was going to. Well, if you got anything more to say on the game, because I was going to move it on and draw the parallel with what you said about with Bath and Quins. It was championship form being found a way to win, and I'd say that was the case with Bath as well, because Quins were definitely the better team in that match.
Yeah, and it's another example of a Premiership game this weekend where a team has come from behind. So Saracens came from behind, Bath came from behind, and Leicester at home to Gloucester came from behind to win. Newcastle were down, but they led for most of the game, and Northampton, they certainly didn't come from behind against Sale.
No,
they didn't, and we'll talk about it.
Unless you count the Rob Dupree one penalty after 1 minute, then I guess they did come from behind.
I guess they did. So, Bath Harlequins, just tell me if you agree with this. This is just me sort of watching, and after 20 minutes thinking, bloody hell, this is a bit unusual. I'd love to know what the kicking stats were. I don't think there was any strategic kicking, or very limited in the first 30 minutes, if not even the first half. There was tactical kicking, there was kick passes, but there was nothing, there was no territory game being played. These two teams just played the ball continuously. And it was this weird matchup between Finn Russell and that sort of short, deceptive passing, not Finn Russell, the other one, Smith, right? Not Finn Smith, Marcus Smith, right? With his little short, deceptive passes and no looks. And, that Don Brandt try was the epitome of that. It was just brilliant. But then you've got Finn Russell, and he was cutting out. They were playing this really neat way of, say, you have three runners, but they're all equally as flat, or rather than being deep like you taught in school, they were in the inverse to that. So the widest runner is the most shallow, so he's got three options to pick. And they continued to do that right flat on the line, incredibly risky. And I think 14-0 down, Quins have got 2 tries. And I'm thinking, Bath are the better team here. I mean, Quins have got 2 very good, very precise tries when they needed it. But the pressure that Bath are applying is far superior. I don't know if you picked up any of that.
What I will say is on the not kicking as much, it's absolutely true on Bath. And,
is it?
And it's the reason, I think, it's the reason why they lost to Bristol. And so I think you have to pick when and how you do it really well. And when they beat Leicester the week before, they kicked a lot more. And so I think this is the great thing about the Premiership matchups and stuff. And I think I would have put boot to ball a little bit more against Quins. I actually thought Finn Russell didn't have a very good game. I thought he was in Marcus Smith's shadow for the match, and I thought Quins I thought they were the better team.
Well, no, I don't agree with you there. I think so. Just watching it, I thought I was watching it on delay. That's why I know I was thinking this. I'm thinking if I was to open my betting account now, 14-0 down, I would put my money on Bath because they kept on breaking the line. And when Quins scored, they scored almost against the run of play. Now, the other thing I'd say is, the Quins Packers looked very, very, very good. I didn't think the Bath's running game through their forwards was great, but it was okay. But no, I don't agree with I don't. I think the Flying Hawks are broadly on par. They're both doing exactly what they do. The fact that Smith managed to engineer 2 tries out of nothing against the run of play probably tells you exactly how good he is. But I think the majority of possession that Finn Russell had equally showed you that he is a fine passer of the ball, and the way he's finding the space with his flat runners is incredibly difficult to do.
Did either of you see? We touched on the Newcastle Chiefs game on Friday night. Did either of you see the other game the Saints Sale game.
Only highlights. But I was flicking around.
Just 1 second. Before you go on to that, do you see Barbary got off injured?
I don't remember seeing it.
So Barbary went off injured, right? But prior to that, I was watching him. And now, I have been up... I can never make up my mind on Barbary. Is he going to be the next... what's his name? Not Kobus. What's the other massive South African that plays for South Africa for the Leicester Tigers and that?
Jasper Wiese.
Jasper Wiese. Is he going to be like England's Jasper Wiese? Or is he just out of shape? And I can't really work out which one it is. He went off injured. And I was looking at some of his running. I just think he's getting less effective. I remember when he first burst on the scene, he was big and he was lean. Now he's big and he looks a little bit tubby. And he just doesn't seem to have the same explosivity at all. And Bath, people who watch Bath and people who talk about the Premiership keep talking about this guy like, if only he could get fit and string some games together. I'm thinking, if only he could get fit and get his S&C together, then we might see the Barbary evolve. But I don't think he's anything like what people are making out to be. And to sort of prove this, the substitute, not Kaluta?
Kurtzia
came on, and he was legit. I mean, he is just an angry, hard-running human. And I think he played exactly how they wanted Barbary to play, but just couldn't really do it.
Yeah, I do wonder with Barbary how much is the attrition of the injuries, because he's only a relatively young man. He's already got a really bad record with injuries, and yeah, I tend to agree with you that he's probably the weight that he wants to be at, but there is some bad weight in there. Alongside, he's a very chunky boy, like a very well built, stout man anyway. So there's good weight, but it's not all good. So yeah, I can't unpack which is affecting him more.
Yeah, and you won't need to look at Olympic weightlifters to realise that you can have bad weight and still be amazing, or the South African props and realise that you can still be exceptional at this game. Looking like a fitness model is not a prerequisite. But I think he's just too chunky. And on top of that, I'm remembering the Barbary who was 19 at Wasps, manhandling 30-year-olds. You don't see that now.
Yeah, I remember working on a game and I gave him a man of the match medal and interviewed him when he scored a hat-trick playing against Leicester. That would have been like 2019. Wow. 2019. Yeah. And the knack that he had back at Wasps, and the reason why everyone was so excited about him, is he clearly had a really good rugby brain. It's kind of actually, in a different way, but similar to Dombrandt, always just seems to pop up in the right place at the right time. And
yeah, do you know what
you can't do it as often as Dombrandt does, or as often as Barbary generally does, and it be anything other than talent. There's no luck involved.
Yeah, some people just understand things, don't they? I think one of the innate skills in sport is the ability to wrestle. I'm sure that's one of the things that you can't improve vastly. And I think being able to take contact like Barbary did is an innate skill, kind of like the ability to wrestle. He just understood how to get over the line and how to, make people miss in a way that you can't really coach. And I don't know where that's gone, but it's definitely not there like it used to be.
No, he has only just turned 24. So this month, 2 weeks ago, he turned 24. So he's got time on his side, very much so. But I hope we see more of him, more game time, more fitness, and more of what he was doing, more the highlight reel from 3-4 years ago.
He's got time to convert back to a hooker.
Yes.
Or a centre. He was a centre yes. as a kid.
13. Tell you what, England wouldn't mind a Bastareaud option. I'd love a Bastareaud option for England.
Well, I was thinking this weekend when I was watching Phil's beloved Ulster, how unfortunate that Stuart McCloskey is Irish. Because in a time when there's been Robbie Henshaw and Bundy Aki, and now Jamie Osborne, who looks legit.
He is good, isn't he?
He's really, really good. If
what do you like about
Osborne,
out of interest?
Sorry, say again?
What do you like about Osborne out of interest?
balanced runner. Just it seems to be whatever the bigger the game, he doesn't get phased. He just is just consistent, solid, good hands, good defence. He's just kind of all round. I don't know. You just never you forget that he's a youngster who's relatively inexperienced.
Yeah, and he's got great hands too.
Yeah.
I remember watching him. I think did he stop 12 in the final? I think that's where I must have seen him. But bloody hell, he's slick.
Yeah. But if Stuart McCloskey was English, he'd have 50 odd caps.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And in the Ulster game, it is worth mentioning another big back, because it does look like finally, after years of injury, my boy Stockers is back to his best, because he scored 2 tries in this game. He had a third try disallowed, and the third try was the best of the lot. It was the best of all of the tries from that game for a marginally forward.
Yeah, we must be getting other international squads announced soon, because I think Wales gets announced tomorrow. But yeah, he must be.
Is that anyone who's Welsh?
Well, because Matt Hansen didn't play at the weekend for Connacht, and he hasn't been available a lot. And it was the fella it was Calvin Nash, wasn't it? But Cubehead, he must be putting his head up. Crichton is going to be in contention. Yeah,
he should be, definitely. The way he's playing this season, he should be. I was actually thinking about Welsh players, not massively to go into the squad, but this weekend there's 3 Welsh players, kind of new signing Welsh players who played very well. In Thomas Williams, Rhys Carey, and I know he's an old new signing, and Nicky Smith was also excellent.
Awesome, isn't he?
Alongside Max Llewellyn, who also got a hat-trick, who was excellent.
And Thomas Williams.
Yeah, I said Thomas Williams.
And Josh Hathaway's on the wing for Gloucester, and Ollie Hassel-Collins will qualify for Wales soon enough, so he was opposite him. And I think if Warren Gatland was watching and interested, then Ollie Hassel-Collins running over Josh Hathaway to score would have been would have raised Gatland's eyebrows, I reckon.
Yeah. Now, Gatland's got a history, hasn't he, of picking players like Alex Cuthbert. If you like Alex Cuthbert, you should love Ollie Hassel-Collins, because for every one that Alex Cuthbert ran over, he had 3 or 4 mega disasters. Hassel-Collins is exactly that player.
He's a big, strong boy.
Definitely, and this was his game to do some good things after doing a few slightly inconsistent things this season.
Max Llewellyn got a couple of caps as well. Max Llewellyn hasn't played. Did he play in the summer?
I don't know, but Max
Llewellyn... was that last year? He played before the World Cup. Maybe he hasn't played since then.
Yeah. So Max Llewellyn is eligible for Wales, but Joe Hawkins at Exeter is not eligible for Wales because of stupid rules. But, if you look at the Welsh boys that have come over recently and applied their trade at the Premiership, you wonder why Wales aren't, constantly in contention for Grand Slams. But, like, the boys that are over here, they don't even consider. So, like, Nicky Smith, I don't think will get into the squad. Rhys Carey, they roundly hate. Thomas Williams is a pariah. Rafael will be in there, I guess, but he plays in the same position.
Davis Jenkins and Chris Chunza will be in.
Yeah, and they've not won a game yet.
Tommy Rafael.
Yeah, you said Rafael.
Oh, you mentioned him, yeah.
Yeah, Rafael will be in there.
I think the Premiership is the best place for Welsh players to come. As soon as you can get over that 20 cap thing, if you're not on one of those centralised contracts, just come over. It makes so much sense.
Definitely. I was going to talk about Northampton Sale before, only briefly, but this is so. I think I only got one prediction right this weekend, and that was only Leicester Tigers winning.
Same.
Late on, I thought every other game I got wrong.
Same.
And I nearly got Tigers wrong, but this game was the one that I was most wrong about because I thought Sale would just have too much up front for Northampton. And I watched the game. Sale they scored one pushover try. They were marginally better at a few scrums, but it shows that the strength of your pack is kind of irrelevant if you gift. So Northampton scored 7 tries, 6 of them were from direct sale errors. Either failing to clear a ball, which was 2 of them, both Joe Carpenter and Roebuck failed to clear balls in their 22. I think 3 of them were for knock-ons that just happened to fall into Hendy or Slightholme or Furbank's hands. And there was at least 1 intercept as well, and 1 horrendous missed tackle in midfield. So no matter how hard your pack is, it's irrelevant if you just cough up ball time and time again.
Everything Northampton tried, or it all stuck, didn't it? And I would love to have heard Alex Sanderson's halftime team talk, because it was 40 points to 10 at halftime, 6 tries conceded, and I reckon it would have been one of those times, the worst sort of talk you ever get, like from a teacher you really quite liked, who says, "I'm not angry, I'm disappointed."
Well, and
I reckon he would have given it one of them.
You don't reckon he turned on a float machine and...
Sorry, lads, it's on me. We didn't walk up enough mountains together in the dark.
Exactly right. Yeah. We don't have enough brotherhood. Let everyone get in the mind gym.
But of the Northampton tries, only one of them, Slightholme's first try, was from good attacking play, good structure, good attacking play.
That's a really good point.
Every single other one was directly the fault of another Sale player, or sometimes 2 or 3 Sale players.
It's interesting you say that, Phil, right? So I had a slightly different takeaway from this, which is, yes, there were errors, so Roebuck and Carpenter in particular. The thing I took away from it was Northampton's ability to generate pressure by identifying space, which is not the way that I like to play rugby at all. But every time they saw space in the backfield, they would kick it. And I think this is building on my theme for the season of tactical kicking being absolute dynamite, being able to stretch the field in different ways. Now, if you want to beat Northampton, your analysis, Phil, is absolutely right. You cannot make any mistakes. You've got to be super clean. You've got to pin them down and beat their heads in over and over again. Sale did not do that. And as soon as they turn over, Northampton's ability to move the ball with the athleticism they have, I mean, they're not quite as shapely as, say, Bristol in attack, but they're not far off. But it's that ability to have the shape and also identify the space behind the opposition team with these little kicks. It's so hard. It causes mayhem. And this is what I was talking about for Newcastle. When Newcastle lost to Sale, the same thing. It's the ability to create mayhem within the back 3 and beyond.
Yeah, that does help. That really does help. Also, just being gifted the ball multiple times with no one in the backfield also helps.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the other thing about Sale as well, they've got a massive pack. But some lads are so one-dimensional. I mean, I watch Simon McIntyre around the field. I think, goodness me. The guy can scrimmage, sure. But he just doesn't get around the field well enough. In fact, a lot of those boys, I think, they're big, they're good at a job, but they're not good at lots of jobs.
I mean, I looked at much like Phil, I looked at the back row matchup and I thought Angus Scott Young, Tom Pearson, Henry Pollock versus Tom Curry, Ben Curry, Dan Dupria. Northampton are going to go the same way they did against Leicester and they're going to get bullied.
Well, you say that, but I tell you what, the young man that stood up against Leicester was Pollock.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Henry Pollock he's 19 and he's had a lot of people saying a lot of good things about him. And I've seen it before, and I really am starting to like this kid. And the thing I love about him most, he's got that kind of Itoji quality where opposition fans are going to hate him because he's just got a brilliant amount of shithouse. I love it.
Yeah. You know what he reminds me of, though, is a young Tom Curry.
Qualify that. Go on. What do you see?
Just the hardness and the abrasiveness. I don't know how big he is. He's about 6'2", 6'3". He's not a massive man, but there's just no backward steps. You give him the ball, he wants to find contact. He wants to hit things. he's got that natural inclination to violence, which both Currys have. It's like he's a younger brother. He's the heir to the Currys, and only having one of them means he will get selected.
Yeah.
There's no correlation, no Ben Curry to pick up any England cash.
Exactly right. No, I'm a huge fan. And
I'm looking forward to a time when Pollock, maybe at the end of Itoji's career, the two of them are playing together, and you've got Ben Earl there, just kind of celebrating knock-ons with with hand claps and whoops, and opposition fans just raging. I can't wait.
Yeah, it is horrible. It is horrible when the opposition are celebrating your massive errors, I've got to say. So Sale got punished, and again, this. If anything, it just highlights, isn't it, like the different styles of play. And if you want to be a Leicester or a Sale or an Exeter or indeed a Newcastle, you've got to play this game absolutely perfectly. Whereas, people would say that it's Northampton that took the risks. I don't think it is now. I think it's the guys that are trying to keep it tight and keep it in the forwards, because there's so many free scoring teams that you can't really afford to do it. I think I'm going to say that. I think the risk has been inverted now.
So the risk is not trying to score; is trying to keep it tight.
Yeah, exactly right. You're playing your possession, you're playing your territory, you're trying to keep it low scoring and back in your defence. That was a recipe for Saracens to win God knows how many titles, and Leicester to win one. I don't think that's the case now. I think that is the riskier way to go.
We've covered most of the Premiership. Tim, I know you watch a lot of French rugby and URC as well. Is there anything other than obviously my beloved Ulster and Stockers being amazing from those leagues that we should be aware of?
There's an absolutely, of course. My beloved Bayonne spanked Racing 92, which you'll love, JB.
Yes, there we go. I knew that your boys
15.
had it in them.
So
how is Manu playing?
He's been involved in the last couple of games, which Bayonne have won. So he's good. The one for
I never thought I'd be saying this.
I was going to say his centre partner is the one you need to watch out for. Makala, Maqala. That guy is absolutely awesome. But yeah, so that was cool. And then there's a game. La Rochelle are currently beating your beloved Bordeaux, Phil. There's about 5 minutes left, and La Rochelle are 32-22 up. Yeah,
which so I'm obviously not watching because I'm chatting to you boys. But Mofana got a red card after 30 minutes, and so La Rochelle were 25-3 up, and Bordeaux are attempting a comeback. So that would be something. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen, but impressive anyway.
And Scarlets beating Bulls is probably standout result of the weekend in the URC. Tom Rogers with like some ankle-breaking sidesteps round Kaine and Moody and Kurtley Arendtser, no less, to score the winning try.
Yeah, they know a thing or two about sidestepping, don't they?
They do.
But not defending them.
So that was pretty cool. The only other bit of news, which I reckon we should touch on, is I mean, I want to know what you think about on the news that came to me via our WhatsApp group and via an article that Ben Coles wrote for, which newspaper does he work for? The Telegraph, is it?
Telegraph, indeed.
About Squidge Rugby being forced off Twitter due to South African fans, apparently.
I mean, Twitter is not a kind place, particularly if you happen to be someone like Courtney Laws, Israel Folau, in which case you've been targeted mercilessly by people who basically want to make your life as miserable as possible. And, of course, he signs off by saying any negativity sent to Israel Folau, which, by the way, he set up a website for. And, by the way, the only racist thing I've ever seen in the history of covering this game within rugby was his attitude towards Courtney Laws, who was the wrong type of black person. He wasn't black enough to experience what other black people have to go through in the UK And therefore, he credit referenced Courtney Lawes' dad, thinking that he was a millionaire. So, all those things combined, it doesn't take away from his talent, by the way. I think he's a wonderful content creator. I think he's got massive amounts of talent. But spare me, honestly. And as for Ben Coles, put it in context, be a real journalist. Maybe say, when Squidge has spent so much time in the gutter of rugby, doing these things to actual people who have played the game, that maybe that is a relevant piece of information when covering this.
Obviously, I've worked on radio, television, and so I've kind of, not in the public eye, but you know what I mean? I've been in a position where people have opinions about what I do and how I do it. And in my radio show, I'd have a screen right there just to my right. You remember coming into the studio to doing the podcast times. I'd have a screen on my right, which in real time would never be filtered. There are quite a lot of radio presenters who have producers who filter the messages that they could see. I never did that. I just had it all. So I had every tweet that mentioned me or the show or anything, and all the texts right there in real time. So
wow.
I developed an ability to just ignore, smile, not give strangers any power over me. So I, within reason and within the law, I think there's a lot of people say, oh, social media needs to be regulated and all the rest of it. Well, there are laws that regulate what you can and can't say. And exactly. I'd say a lot of those have gone too far in the UK. But aside from that, as long as it's within the laws, I think people should express themselves however they want. And if you don't like it, you've got a choice. You can either completely ignore it or don't go on it. And so I applaud Squidge for not going on it and making that choice. But I would say he's not a victim. That's just a choice that he's made.
I wonder if he would have been able to cope with somebody targeting him like he targeted Israel Folau, or targeting like he targeted Courtney Lawes in order to make him lose sponsorship. I wonder if he would have coped with that.
Anything else to discuss before we preview next week's games?
Well, actually, talking of not being able to cope with things, the very interesting case, which is bubbling along at the moment, of the concussion scandal. And I think it is Will Green, isn't it? Who has won a court decision against the solicitors firm who are bringing the concussion claim against World Rugby and the RFU. So he's won his claim that he doesn't have to, he's won his claim that he doesn't have to pay back the costs of his brain scan. So he had a brain scan, and this was funded by the law firm. They got their doctor, whose name escapes me, say, here are some shadows on your brain, here, here, and here. This is in this was all reported in the Telegraph. And then after, I think, a couple of months or several months waiting, Will Green decided to have a second opinion because he thinks he's going to die of early onset dementia. And their second brain scan's like, no, you're good to go. So then he calls up and says, you've told me I'm on this claim due to my brain scan. Well, I've had another brain scan from a guy in Harley Street and I don't have any issues. So can I leave, please? Like, well, you can if you pay us 10 grand. Now,
you did actually mention this probably about a year ago, Jay.
But it did make me wonder, like, what happens? Like, how do you adequately screen these guys to make sure that they're not vulnerable to other factors? So if you've left the game and say you've struggled with leaving in exactly the same way that, say, soldiers struggle from leaving the army because they're no longer institutionalized and no longer part of a wider body of people, they're away from their mates. There's all sorts of different things that come about. If you're struggling to transition away from the game, plus the money aspect because you're not earning the money that you once had, and then someone knocks on your door saying, by the way, would you like a brain scan because there's some money to be had here? How do they screen out the people who are truly vulnerable to brain injury compared to just vulnerable because of all of their, all the consequences of leaving professional rugby? Which is serious.
And you also mentioned the element where people were feeling trapped by having to pay the costs to exit the litigation. I'm sure you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. So,
I think so.
So what I was worried about is they pay the costs for these brain scans. Well, I think the way it works is you pay the cost for the brain scans, and if there's something wrong with your brain, then logically you proceed with the case. Now, if you proceeded with the case for like 6 months, or I don't know, it takes 2 years to come about, and you pulled out last minute, well, that's fair, because you've told the solicitors firm to continue, and because there's no win, no fee, they've got to be able to at least, try the case. That is fair. But this is different, isn't it? Because one brain scan run by a solicitor says, yeah, you've got a problem. And the next one, done by a non-interested third party, says, no, you're fine. In that case, Will Green's correct. He should be released from that. And I wonder how many other players will be in the same situation. Because what is really worrying, right, for in the Will Green scenario, is that he thought he was going to die of early onset dementia or have it. Actually, it's worse if you don't die, isn't it? Because of the financial strain it puts on your family. And, it's a horrendous thing, which they're saying that these boys might have.
Well, in terms of financial advice, JB, if the one question which everyone would kind of, in a way, practically like to know is how many years am I actually going to live? Because then you could actually calculate how much you would. And he could have, some of these people might have made completely different life choices on the basis of what they thought their life might be like. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Spend your last pound on your last day is perfect financial planning, but you can't do it.
And the other bit is that when, so prior to Will Green getting the second scan, I think part of that was because he asked for the neurological report, the evidence of his the failure or the problems that he was having, and it was Rylands Garth, the solicitors, refused to give him the scan, and I think that's what led him to go and get the second scan. So there was definitely some hidden information. Well, I'm certain that's what, when I read the Telegraph article.
Just refer to a phrase Phil uses all the time, show me the incentive and I'll show you the behaviour.
Yes. Yeah, well, let me just read you a text message. So I have a text which is forwarded to me by an ex-player who I'm a good friend with. And basically it just reads that if you are in the cohort of players that play between 95 to 2000s, the likelihood is you've been overexposed and that you've got damage. And this damage means you probably have dementia or something like that, and it'll set in when you're 60, and this stuff shouldn't set in until you're 80. And then it goes on to name a former player who already is suffering as the example. Now, we just don't know this, do we? We don't know if it is going to kick in at 60 or 80. I think these are very, very imprecise figures. And, if you are one of these players that have been suffering, like Michael Littman is the guy everyone refers to, who has got dementia. Michael Littman's case is very complex. Yes, he had head injuries because of the way he played. He also had, abuse issues. And I'm not saying that one thing caused them and the other thing is a mitigator or vice versa. I'm just saying it's very, very complex to wade through, what really is the cause of dementia. The biggest cause is for me, the biggest worry for me personally would be the amount of drinking I've been exposed to during my rugby career, which I think is absolutely obscene. And I think we were probably the first generation to drink industrial strength alcopops and lagers and everything else at the volume that we did. And I think that is a massive issue, far more so than any amount of contact sport which I've played. So, there will be more here. And I don't know if you remember this. I spoke to a guy called Adam Hughes. He was the centre for Newport. I think he's club captain at Newport. He also played for Dragons. And he's a really eloquent, smart guy when it comes to why this case is important to him and why it's important to many former players. And I'm sure that there is questions to answer from that time period, but it's untangling who's really vulnerable to head injuries rather than vulnerable from leaving the game, and what actually caused these issues medically when I think substance abuse and drinking and everything else is rife within rugby. How do you untangle it all? I think that's going to be the issue.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think I'd probably just say on this Will Green news that broke this week, it's something that I wouldn't say want to happen, but I don't want lots of these 900 rugby players. I don't want any of them to have any serious consequences. I'm also a little bit sceptical about the whole legal case and the exactly as you said or hinted at before, Tim, the incentives around it. But what I don't want to do, what I've got to be careful of, is extrapolating from this one bit of evidence on Will Green, where it does appear that there was something wrong, or there was something wrong with the way it was being processed. That could have been just a perfectly innocent mistake from the law firm, and it was just an error in process or an error in the reading of the scan. It doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with the way that the other 899 people have been processed. We will have to wait and see how that goes.
Do you know the one thing which really bothered me about this? And again, I don't think I wouldn't even say it goes as far as say it's a criticism of the law firm as such, but it's the fact that, okay, you can say scarring on the brain. So when I spoke to Adam Hughes, he said, look, I've got scarring on my brain. I'm okay now, but I don't know how this is going to manifest in the future. I don't know what the brain scans for Will Green showed, but ultimately he was left thinking he's going to have dementia. And people handle this in different ways. But what really bothered me was like drawing the correlation between, marks on the brain and dementia, and also just leaving lads who are trying to raise families and get on with their life, thinking that at some point they're going to have dementia. I mean, if you thought you were going to have dementia because of your rugby career, and you've got a neurosurgeon says, yeah, mate, might be, you're in a lawsuit now, and then you forgot your keys. All of a sudden, something which happens to me on a daily basis, and it does happen to me on a daily basis, starts to become really stressful. And I wonder how much burden this is putting on players who think, oh, Christ, did I lose my keys because I won't be able to remember my children's name next week? Or do I lose my keys because that's just what happens? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real problem for me. I think that's going to be really stressful.
Mm-hmm. Unquestionably, yeah. It would be, you can only imagine how horrendous that would be, thinking that you are in that situation. Next week's games.
Well, just before that, there's one thing I want to mention, because it's something we've got a bunch of emails about this evening and today, through the day actually, which is something we mentioned on a previous podcast, might have been last week, but it's the use of AI by TNT Sport, or Premiership Rugby, I should say, in generating their highlights for the games. Might be TNT Sport, might be Premier Sport, I don't know. But clearly it's what they're doing, because the Quins Bath highlights from Premiership Rugby today do not feature any tries. It's bizarre. It's nuts. It just features a couple of phases and then it cuts to another part of the game. I don't believe there's any human input in coming up with it, and no one has even bothered to check it before uploading it to the official Premiership Rugby account. It's amazing. Ridiculous.
So I did watch. I can't remember which account it was on, but I did watch one of the Quins Bath games, and it did show some tries, but it also missed at least 2 tries because the scoreline just jumped, and it also showed bits that you just didn't need to see. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there is use of AI, and it'll be on the time. It'll be errors in the time coding, perhaps, and then AI just cut the time codes. But if there's an error in the time code, it just plays through the error.
Yeah, it's awful. It's the worst yet. And so thank you to all the people that emailed in.
Yeah, thank you for all the people that didn't check the highlights before they uploaded it. Rugby is a very special sport, isn't it? Which only rugby really could use AI to find new and unique ways to mess up. I mean, for most industries, AI solves a problem. For rugby, it managed to make more problems because, I don't know, who are these people? Who are these people who are running the sport, broadcasting the sport? The litany of mistakes is just hilarious.
It is quite funny when I think about the amount of content that on my own I can generate in a week on a YouTube channel and us on our podcast, and then you see that it's actually quite funny, but it's giving us a giggle.
Yeah, I'm actually always amazed. I'm always amazed by. So I've got a friend who's in like podcasting, like professional podcasting, not like us, and the amount of effort that it takes to put out a podcast for a handful of people. Say if you're a celebrity and you've never done a podcast and you go to a professional podcasting firm, the bills for podcasts run into the thousands, if not tens of thousands per episode. It's incredible. I was like, well, what have you spent the money on? Like, an editor, and then we've got producers, and we've got to listen to it 3 or 4 times, and artwork. It's like, this is insane.
I heard it was actually on I can't remember what I listened to. It might have been today even. But Joe Rogan was talking about this with. Oh, that's right. It was the guy who founded Vice News, which then turned into an absolute.
Which one? Because one of them is hilarious. Gavin McGuinness is hilarious.
Not him. It was a different guy.
Shane Smith.
Yes. And he was talking with Shane Smith, and Joe Rogan, who, bearing in mind, has got the biggest podcast in the world, was going, I don't know what these other people making podcasts do. They get all these people. I can't believe it. It's just me and him, Jamie. It's just me and Jamie. It's just the two of us. There's no one else that runs this thing. And they spend so much money. He made basically the same point you're making. Yeah.
Yeah,
but I would recommend paying even an intern, just giving him minimum wage to just check a highlights package before uploading it. Might be money well spent.
Let me show you an error that I've just spotted on a. It's not an AI error. It's an error on an image. So I'm just going to share my screen.
Yep.
I'm going to see if I can share a screen. Can you see that?
No. That's Phil. I think you meant to keep that on a private browser. That's not. No.
Oh my word, that's huge.
So you can see. So this is the article about Will Green. This is Planet Rugby, generally a pretty good site. You've got Will Green in the main picture, and then a little inset, and it's what I thought they were trying to do was show Steve Thompson with Will Green, if you can see that, but it's not. It's Steve Thompson with Graham Rowntree, who does from a bit of a distance look like Will Green. You can see why someone would get those two confused, except for the label is former Western England prop Will Green and Red Rose legend Steve Thompson and Phil Vickery. So,
oh, by the way, 2 errors there, right?
I think it is. I think they tried to get a picture of.
Well, what's it? What's the other? Well, what's the other error?
Well, Red Rose is what you call the England women's team.
Correct him. Those two boys have never played the Red Roses in their lives.
Not yet. Not until they transition.
Imagine. Yeah, exactly right.
The other bit of feedback is I loved that Wasp kit with the Canterbury collar, that Heineken Cup winning kit.
Yeah,
who is the first player that comes to mind when you see that kit?
I just thought of Joe Worsley.
What? Oh, so first one is Van Gisbergen, but then Delalio, obviously.
Yeah. Phil Greening.
Did you miss my suggestion?
Lovely kit. Quattrino.
Sorry, did you miss my suggestion? That's the obvious one.
Who, Quattrino?
Yeah,
because he gifted them the try to win.
He misses the ball, but he misses the ball for Rob Howley, who was in that kit.
Rob Howley, that's another great one. Paul Volley.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul Saki.
Saki.
Bloody hell.
Stuart Abbott. Who was the fly half? It was the guy, Alex King.
Alex King.
Yeah. Oh, we've nearly named the whole of that Wasp team now. So we've gone Van Gisbergen at the back, Saki and Tom Voice. Centres, we've already mentioned one, Stuart Abbott, and what was the other?
Well, it depends. You could go Fraser Waters, you could go Rinley, because he'd been knocking about. There would be another guy. Was Kenny Logan there at that time?
Might have been. There might have been an
Logan
overlap.
was probably there.
But yeah, so that's the back line, which is a pretty awesome back line. Then the pack, Phil Vickery, Phil Greening.
Was Cipriani not playing?
What was the name of the big Samoan hooker? Trevor Leota.
Leota.
Trevor Leota.
Yeah.
And that is a little bit earlier, I think. Because is Ibanez not knocking about Wasps? Was he Saracens?
No,
Maybe he was Saracens.
No, he was Wasps, wasn't he?
Maybe he's both.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's
and
both.
who would the loose head proper been? Like Tim Paine a bit, but then there was and then Locks, Simon Shaw, and
Tom French. Don't forget Tom French.
And Tom Palmer was a bit later, wasn't he?
Tom French had his debut in the final. Tom Palmer, wow. Simon Shaw. There is another one that you're missing. There's another one, and it's bugging me now. Tom Rees, maybe.
I was going to say the back row would have
been. Johnny O'Connor?
Was he later? He was around, but the back row was Joe Worsley,
Johnny
Paul
O'Connor,
Volley, Lawrence Delalio.
Was it Paul Volley that started?
Oh, it's a good team.
I do not know.
Good team. Right, I'm happy signing off for that.
Great names.
Predictions for next week?
Yeah, well, you've got to do next week's predictions.
Yeah, let's rattle through them. So,
right, and also let's just not run through them because we know so much about these teams now. Let's actually try and get them right.
Well,
based on what we know.
This week, I should have got 100% wrong this week if Gloucester hadn't bottled it. So I know that I know nothing.
Or we know that the Premiership
I know that I've been too
fantastic.
Passive. Yeah, I know I've been too passive recently, and I've just allowed you two to browbeat me into fast predictions. I'm going to do slow predictions. I'm going to get them right.
When you did
go for it.
Well, when you did a slow prediction, you predicted that Saracens would unleash fury that the world has never seen on Harlequins, and it did not happen. So maybe we should speed up.
Yeah. Occasionally I'm wrong, just like Michael Fish. But for the majority of my career, much like Michael Fish, I will be right.
Well, I mean, technically in 1987, it wasn't actually a hurricane. Technically.
Correct. He's even right then.
He was correct. Bristol v Saints on Friday night.
Both going to score a load of points. Hang on. I think Saints will be able to expose Bristol more than Bristol will be able to expose Saints. I'm going Saints.
Give me Bears. Although Bears have been bad at home.
Yeah, weirdly, they have been bad at home.
Just a quick one. Is Trevor Davidson in the England squad?
Yes.
Good. Every time I see that boy play in the loose, he looks like a man mountain. He looks bigger every time I see him.
He's a big boy.
Yeah. I'm going to go for Bristol.
Yes, good. That makes sense.
Yeah, Bristol.
Well, I'll be putting money on this, so it's definitely Northampton.
Then on Saturday in the morning, first thing, 6:50 a.m., Japan play New Zealand. If you are interested, call
New
over
Zealand.
Over a coffee early doors in the morning. And then it's Gloucester v Newcastle.
Gloucester.
Hold your horses. Let's think about this.
I don't need to think about that one.
Let me come back to that.
That's a home win. And it's a home win when Bath play Sale, the televised game, 3:05.
Sale would have to play 100 times better than they did this weekend to have a shot at that. They were so bad.
Well, okay, so look, Sale are not going to play that bad again. Although, by the way, Nike Levu, if he plays any worse, they will play him at fly half. It is astonishing. It is astonishing how bad he has been in the last few games. I would even have Manu back at this point.
So, He's taking his time to fit in.
I think. Sure. Yeah.
Are the England players going to be available? Because I heard that there's some warm weather training with the England players. Are they going to go away and then come back?
They are due to fly out. I think they're flying out on Monday to Verona. I think Verona.
Oh, are they?
Just up the road, Jay.
Yeah, well, kind of. Middle of the country.
So Bath are going to win that. Saracens v Leicester. That's an interesting matchup.
I'm going for all home wins so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was really liking the look of Leicester last week. They look a little bit more fragile against Gloucester.
But I guess the interesting thing is that even playing poorly, and they did play badly in that first half,
Yeah,
they still found a way to win. Kind of like their game against Exeter, kind of like their game against Northampton last weekend. So maybe, but I can't see them beating Saracens.
I actually fancy Leicester to, but like just the Pollard factor. I don't know.
I mean, it does make a difference.
I'm gonna go Leicester.
Leicester, so you've gone one away win so far.
And then Exeter Quins on Sunday.
Yes. Gimme Quins.
Yeah,
that's my only away win.
It's going to be 0-6 for the start of the season. Oh my goodness!
It is. I just hope. I'm certain because Exeter are a good, well managed, well run club. I just hope there is no talk from anyone about Baxter, because as in getting rid of Baxter, because that would be the worst thing that they could possibly do.
Anyone that says Baxter out doesn't understand rugby and needs to give her head a wobble. Not a chance.
Absolutely correct.
Right, let's quit.
One correction. I said that England were flying to Verona. They are not. They are flying to Girona tomorrow on Monday. They fly to Girona for their warm weather training.
I don't know where Girona is. I'm just looking it up. Spain rather than Italy, right? Yeah, Catalonia.
It's northern Spain, like an hour north of Barcelona. I've been there. Some of Game of Thrones was filmed in Girona. Some of the stuff in King's Landing was filmed in Girona.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, very nice. It'd be a nice part of the world to go at this time.
Yeah, cracking. Right, thank you very much for listening. Get more content at patreon.com/EggChasers and let the boys end.